It was a year ago, almost to the day. Rabbi Geffen and I and our former student intern, now Rabbi Erin Binder, and another woman entered the room. We felt the warm, moist air and we smelled chlorine. We were not, however, there for a swim. It was, as you recall, deep in the time of COVID, and the lake was really cold. The local mikveh was closed. So after a little research, which showed us that it's possible to use a swimming pool under certain circumstances, when there's no mikveh around, you add some fresh water. We'd brought the mom of an upcoming bar mitzvah to a friend's pool for immersion in the mikveh, for conversion. For this woman, who had begun her studies years earlier, way before she was a parent, timing was everything. She wanted to be called to the Torah for an aliyah as a Jew. And she wanted her son to be called to this bima as the child of both his parents, which he was, but by him, Ben, son of both of his parents' Hebrew names. She writes, I started my journey to learn about Judaism and the conversion process while I was pregnant with my firstborn son, the same son who was bar mitzvah here last November. Looking back now as a curious and inquisitive woman who grew up in a religious household, I knew this was something I wanted to partake of and learn more about. As my life took me in various directions, I remained focused and determined to learn and understand the importance of raising my children Jewish, and also providing myself a foundation for maintaining a Jewish home. For 14 years, she lived an actively Jewish life in the synagogue and at home, hosting Seder, volunteering, participating in Shabbat and holiday services at Beth Emet and here at NSCI. And as her elder son's bar mitzvah approached, she returned to study. She explains, it did not matter to me that I was not born Jewish, did not speak Hebrew fluently, or could not cook traditional holiday meals. I openly embraced and eagerly wanted to be a part of the Jewish community. My journey has had inspirational moments of progress and discouraging or questioning periods of pauses. With inner strength, courage, determination, and faith, I've been able to work toward this new accomplishment. As I embark on this new chapter in my life, I know I am right where I belong and will continue to be a lifelong learner to support, maintain, and nurture a Jewish household. I should add I use her words with permission. That series of 3 dips in a swimming pool, when you go to the mikvah, some of you know you immerse 3 times, was sandwiched time-wise between 2 other powerful conversions. 2, as it turns out, mothers-to-be, each completed their conversion somewhat virtually and then in person. 2 mothers-to-be who taught to the Beit Din, the rabbinic court of 3 rabbis, over Zoom weeks before giving birth. One Zoomed from downtown Chicago, and she explained what her project was, as it were, her people research. She interviewed many family, friends, and colleagues about being a Jewish parent and about their meaningful Jewish practice, what their journeys were. And the other Zoomed from Seattle, where she and her husband are temporarily living after being on the North Shore. And she spoke about her research about Sukkot and her excitement to build a sukkah and celebrate it with her family, bridging the parts of her identity. She, a Japanese American and now Jew, and her husband's Ashkenazi Jewish roots. She explains, I found one article about Sukkot where a rabbi reflected on the universality and community aspects of Sukkot by having a different cuisine every night. And I thought it would be fun to include Japanese cooking into our Sukkot. I also love the idea of welcoming our familial ancestors in the sukkah. Some of you know we invite our mystical guests, or ushpizin, into the sukkah and tell stories about them. She writes that this is very aligned to some of the traditions we have on my Japanese side about honoring our ancestors and keeping their memories alive. Both of these women, I might add, welcomed babies a few weeks after marking their conversion, and we named those babies, yes, over Zoom. And each of them have Hebrew and English names that link them to the Jewish side of their family and to the Christian side of their family. Did you know that Naomi was not only a Hebrew name, but a Japanese name? I learned that. This week in Torah, we read that our patriarch Abram, yes, later Abraham after he affirms the covenant, is told, Lech Lecha, go. Leave your homeland, your birthplace, your father's house, and go to this place I'll show you. We know the crazy thing is that he does it. He picks up and goes. He brings his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and as Torah tells us, all the souls that they have acquired. What's that? Commentators say, and the Hebrew translates to all the souls that they had made, asu. The commentators say that that means all the people they had brought along to their faith. You could anachronistically say those who had converted to Judaism. The term is a later term. This week I juxtaposed that departure, Abram and Sarai just picking up and going from all that is familiar, with that phrase, all the souls that they had made. Because here's the thing. Those who convert to Judaism are in essence leaving so much that is familiar and setting out on a journey that they think they kind of know, but it's not, they don't totally know. They're not leaving everything behind. They still have loving relationships with family and connections and heritage, and they may even have been living a Jewish life. But time and again, I've heard Jews by choice say that even if they had a clear intention of where they were going, becoming Jewish, that the journey proved deeper and more meaningful than they'd imagined. So think about it. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, so-and-so just converted to get married? I've heard it a lot. I've heard it for years, in fact. But just isn't it. It's not just in conversion. Conversion is a journey, and a really courageous one at that. And a journey that takes picking up and going, not like Abraham and Sarai exactly. You don't have to go walk for miles and miles, but a journey to unfamiliar territory. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. What does it take? First, it takes Jewish learning. Our students take an introduction to Judaism class, and then along the way and after can study with one of us, rabbis, cantor. They learn about holidays, life cycle events, values, communal practice. And then they take on some learning on their own. What else do they really want to know about? I ask each of my conversion students to take on a project so they can be an expert on one small corner of the Jewish world, because there's so much that can feel overwhelming. I want them to feel confident that they can explain and teach. Over the years, I've learned about the Jewish history of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, building a family home practice of Shabbat, the family of the children, Shavuot, the Book of Ruth, and so much more. So along with that Jewish learning, right, Judaism is not just learning, it's doing. So we ask our students to do, to take on Jewish practice. Many of them are living that sometimes. Synagogue prayer, holidays, explaining what they're learning to their family who are not Jewish. Even cooking for holidays, taking on a new practice. This journey of learning and doing doesn't have a set timeline, so a year is a good guideline to live the Jewish year as if with the intention of being Jewish. And the culmination is, as I mentioned in the beginning, mikvah, immersing in the mikvah for that spiritual transformation, choosing and being blessed with a Hebrew name, and then marking that conversion ritually. Sometimes in a private ritual, and here a Purim sanctuary, and sometimes, as you've heard, in our Shabbat worship. It is so powerful. Our new Jews may hold the Torah, say Shema, affirm their faith, and they affirm their Hebrew name. And what you may know is that someone who has chosen Judaism takes a Hebrew name, and they are known as Ben or Bat, Avraham v'Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, the child of Abraham and Sarah. a descendant of those ancestors, which, yes, literally we all are, but that acknowledgement brings us back right to this week's Torah portion. And while Jews by choice might have that in common, their journeys are as different as can be. They might be single, married, divorced, widowed, all ages. Female, male, non-binary. They could be brand new to Judaism. They could have found that they had a distant relative that they suddenly found out was Jewish. They might have had a childhood friend whose family traditions just seemed great, or a college friend. They might have been married for years and years to someone who was Jewish and one day said, I'm ready to do this. So many different paths. So many different paths. And some who have lived a Jewish life for years decide it's time. Some of you may have heard last May, dear member of our congregation, Anne Dubois, speak about her journey. And I share some of Anne's words. Anne explains, I could have remained a non-Jewish member of my family, participating in their Jewish life. I felt like I was outside looking in. I want Judaism to be our religion. I yearn to participate fully, be completely immersed in everyday Jewish life and life events with my husband and children. I want to have our Jewish life together. I embrace Jewish values and strive to study, wrestle with, and ask the Jewish whys. I want to be the source of Jewish knowledge, strength, and wisdom for my family. Anne explains so powerfully that she converted 30 years into her marriage and living a Jewish life, raising Jewish children who are b'nai mitzvah and confirmed here. She describes sitting in the sanctuary, actually on the bima on Yom Kippur, and she writes, I was overwhelmed by the realization that I was where I belong. I felt a profound sense of confirmation that it was time. While I had begun my Jewish journey over 30 years ago, I officially embarked on steps to convert to Judaism, studying Torah and teachings and working to become a bat mitzvah. Indeed, Anne was one of our adult b'nai mitzvah just a few days later, on Shavuot. The examples of adults who've chosen Judaism have inspired me since I was a child. I remember watching my father sitting in our living room studying, my mother teaching dear friends to make matzah balls. I've listened to so many people share their stories. What is their draw to Judaism, the reasons for their journey, what inspires, what challenges them, what they're not sure about. Throughout my rabbinate, I've been blessed to study with incredible people who want to be Jewish, who ask really hard questions, who wrestle. And as Anne mentioned, even as they wrestle, go forward with strength and faith. Each of us here, I'm sure, knows someone who has converted to Judaism. But have you ever asked them their story? Have you ever asked them why or how, what's most meaningful, what they wrestle with? Do it. Invite them for a walk in the Botanic Gardens, a phone call, a Zoom call, a cup of tea, whatever works. Say, I want to hear your story. I want to hear about your journey to Judaism, when you got up and moved from the familiar into something new. For as Anne Dubois sagely teaches us, Judaism is not the destination. It is the journey. It is the lifelong exploration toward living a fulfilled Jewish life, seeking wholeness and peace with the comfort of community and Torah as our guide. Indeed, that journey is Anne's. And it's a journey for all of us, whether we were born Jewish or we chose Judaism and became Jewish. It is a journey that is hers, a journey that is ours. Lech lecha. Go journey. Shabbat shalom.